Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome. This is Todd Taskey from the Second Bite Podcast. Happy to have you for today's episode, which features a longtime friend of mine, Hugh Campbell from AC4S down in Tampa, Florida, which is a really interesting story for a couple of different reasons that we'll get into in just a minute. Hugh, thanks for being with us today.
Todd, I'm so happy to be here. It's good to reconnect with you, and I'm happy to support you.
Yeah, well, it's a great story, Hugh, so I'm excited to get into it, which I want to do in just a second. As you know, on this podcast, we get to talk to a lot of CEOs and founders who have done something really extraordinary in my mind, which is to build a company of value and sell it for 7 or 8 figures. But there are also people that most of our listeners have never heard of before, right? They're not launching themselves into space. They're not running for president. They're not on the cover of Forbes magazine. But the stories are really great, and yours is one of those. So I'm excited to get into that. As we do, I just want to thank real quickly our sponsors, the good people at Trivest. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Trivest Capital Partners. They're down in Miami, Florida. They've been a private equity investor for 30 years, 40 years. They've done over 300 transactions. They've got a great process for growing the value of a business. They're constantly on those lists, Hugh, of founder-friendly private equity firms, best private equity firm for founders, all that kind of stuff. They're specifically targeted to founder-held and family-held businesses. They have 3 great funds, one in specific that focuses on companies at $1 to $2 million of EBITDA that want to be a platform company, which is one of their funds that we work with a lot. So Trivest, TRIVEST.com /second bite. They've got a bunch of material on there for our listeners if you want to explore that some or get more information on Trivest. So Hugh, let's jump into the AC4S story.
Sure.
And maybe a good way to do that is maybe you could explain, first of all, what AC4S means, because you've educated me on that, and then talk about who it is that AC4S serves, and maybe a little bit that gives us a sense of the size of the company.
Sure. All right. So AC4S is really turned it into similar to like 3M, Minnesota Mining and Materials, or whatever it is. It actually stands for Advanced C4 Solution. So it's an embedded acronym. It's operates in the federal sector, and C4 is a military acronym. It's not explosives. It's command, control, communications, and computers. So it's really an IT company for the federal space. And we started by doing IT things for the military, really post 9/11.
As I remember, you, a lot of that was the unsung hero type of stuff, right? You go to the front lines. Somebody needs to communicate. Somebody needs to have Wi-Fi. Somebody needs to have internet, and it's AC4S with boots on the ground serving the warfighter.
That's absolutely right. And we started by supporting those military organizations that were deploying and going places and getting things done. And it was a very niche type of market because the communications are very specialized. They're austere environments and things of those nature. So we basically leveraged and capitalized on the relationships and the expertise we had developed in the military doing those kinds of things.
And you serve primarily the Department of Defense?
Well, that's the way we started, but over time, we had the company for over 15 years. The organization morphed and provided a wide range of both products and services to the federal sector at the end. But so that's why we say AC4S, while it started out from a, support doing IT things for the military, it morphed over time. And so we truncate, we used the name AC4S because we were doing all kinds of things beyond just IT.
Gotcha. And so you built the company over 15 years in the what people here in Washington, D.C. refer to as the GovCon or the government contracting space.
Right.
So that has its own bowl of acronyms and confusing contract terms and all that kind of stuff. But you grew the business very successfully over 15 years to the point that you had folks knocking on your door interested in doing an acquisition. Can
That's
you
right.
talk about roughly the size of the business and then maybe a little bit about how you got introduced to the group that eventually was your acquirer?
So, yeah, we did pretty well in that GovCon space. I think we were, I don't know, top 10, 15% of the small businesses running around doing government contracts across the nation. So we did pretty well. At our peak, we were about $52 million business, with over 300 employees, all over the world, as you can imagine, supporting the federal government, the U.S. federal government. There's things to do all over the country around the world, literally from the Philippines, in the East, I guess you could say, all over the United States, and then certainly in the Middle East. And we had um, uh, people deployed in Europe as well. So we were pretty busy. We had people all over the place doing all kinds of things. But obviously, the bulk of the employees were here in the United States and the Middle East.
Now, it obviously takes capital to grow a business from scratch up to $50 million. It was you and Norm as your partner. And so you had grown this business well, certainly at that size. And I know that you were nicely profitable. But at some point, when did you start to think about an exit for the two of you? And how did that relate timing wise to the transaction?
Quite honestly, we built the company with the intention to do an exit. So that was our strategic plan from the beginning. We thought we would do 3 to 5 years and then, 10 to $15 million in revenue. We thought we could get there, but we were doing pretty well. So that timeline stretched out to actually we sold at the 16-year mark, uh, almost 16 and a half years. But the people were always knocking. We at one point we decided that we were, the best kept secret, and so we purposely decided to, get our name out there with, trying to get awards and get on the radar and those types of things. And we spent a lot of time in DC. We went back and forth to DC, really trying to grow our presence in the market and having people appreciate what we were doing. So we were very intentional about that. And that led to, all the M&A banks and others reaching out to us. And quite honestly, the folks that reached out to us, we ultimately did a deal with. They approached us about 2 years before the transaction, and we told them no. We were focused on other players in the market. We wanted to do a strategic deal to maximize our value. We studied what was going on in the marketplace. People like you helped us. And so we were kind of focused on, larger strategic players. The folks that approached us, they were just getting started in the M&A space, and they had a plan, but we didn't really want to take a chance on them.
Sure. So this is about 2017, 2018?
This was probably end of 2016. They approached us, and we told them no. And we told them no.
Got it. And you were how big at that time?
Oh, geez, we were probably 40, somewhere between 45 and 50 million a year in revenue.
At that size, was it all GovCon, or did you have any commercial work that you were doing?
It was all GovCon. We had one or two contracts in the commercial space, but we took those contracts as a stepping stone to more federal work.
Got it.
Right.
And so you go from, let's say, 2017, and you're having conversations, kind of in and out of that process. And then these guys come back again in 2018.
Correct.
What had changed in either their offer or your thinking around them as a potential acquirer?
Well, two things. One is they had actually done a couple of transactions in the ensuing period. So they came back and said, hey, we've already done 3 transactions. We're still interested in you guys. We think you got a great story, da 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 da. And, it catches your attention when somebody does what they say they're going to do. So, we actually had all of the infrastructure that they needed. And I will tell you quite honestly, one of the, we did pretty well and there's money made and all of that. But quite honestly, one of the biggest things was most of my senior staff were promoted into the acquiring organization. It was a holding company at the top, and they had 3 operating companies, and we became the 4th operating company. And most of my senior staff got promoted up into the holding company to help with the whole kit and caboodle. And so that was really a validation. Not only, we built the business, we were doing the right things, all those things, but, it gave opportunities for the senior leaders and that we had built a good team. And that's quite honestly very gratifying.
I would imagine it is. Out of the 50 million, so you're about $50-ish million. How big were they at the
time? About the same size.
Wow. So you really added a lot to them. So
yeah.
Your guys now got an opportunity to run a $100 million business with a transaction overnight.
That's right.
And then, having done a lot of transactions in the services space, people are always concerned when they structure a deal that the founders are going to leave and take customers, take employees, or people are going to leave because the founder left. From a structure standpoint, do you remember, and can you share approximately how much consideration you got up front on your deal? And was there earnout? Did you also get equity in the larger company and the rest?
We didn't get any equity in the new company for a variety of reasons. The company that bought us was a native Hawaiian-owned company, and they have special considerations. The socioeconomic things that the federal sector has. So we really couldn't participate in that. So in ownership. So what we did was we had initial payments, and then we had the opportunity for earnouts based on any work that we brought and leverage their capabilities as well. So we had initial payments and then the opportunity to participate, kind of, as you would say, a second bite, right?
Right. And so how much of the overall consideration as a percentage did you guys get up front? And then how much did you have the opportunity to earn over the next 2 years? Was it evenly distributed over that period?
No, the vast majority was in the structure of the deal at close. And then the upside was really only, let's see. The upside was only about 30 or 35%.
So you got about 2/3 in cash at close.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, and then you had a kernel of an idea in your mind, which was the private sector, which today is AC4S Technologies.
Correct. And I will tell you, um, I think it's very important for the founders and every business owner to really honestly decide what it is you want. So, my business partner, we were 50-50, um, wanted to stay engaged in the federal sector. Um, he was very successful, and as a result, the organization was very successful in a couple of different areas in the federal sector, and so he wanted to continue to do that. Me, on the other hand, um, we actually started AC4S Technologies a couple of years before the exit as a means to diversify. If you look at your entire portfolio and your private wealth and all those things, most successful business owners have the vast majority of their wealth tied up in the business.
Right.
And we wanted to try to diversify. It was a diversification play. And quite honestly, I knew I wanted to be in charge of something.
As opposed to working for somebody.
Yeah. Now, we had employment contracts, but they were honestly quite loose. And they asked me in particular to do a couple of different things that I really wasn't interested in. I'll be honest with you. And I knew that, there was significant potential with the AC4S Technologies, which is strictly private sector, going back to our IT roots and doing, a pure play IT in the private sector. And there's, dozens and dozens of stories about people doing extremely well in that space. And, I knew that I wanted to lead and see if I could figure out this private sector stuff. We had a private sector business before we started our federal business. We sold that. We did okay, but we didn't, as I tell people, we didn't make Mark Cuban money.
Right.
So I wanted to try my hand at that, continue our diversification play, and see how that is. So AC4S Technologies now is only focused on private sector, small and medium businesses. Our customers are generally in the southeastern United States. We're headquartered in Tampa, Florida. The vast majority of our customers are in the southeastern United States. We do have customers in the mid-Atlantic, the Midwest, and they have offices and branch offices and operations.
So let me ask you this, Hugh, because one of the questions that people ask me sometimes in the process, and probably every entrepreneur wonders, is how close to the vest do you keep those desires, and how much do you share with the buyer so you don't want to mess it up, you don't want to spook them, but you don't want to work for them. You don't mind doing a year or two if you have to. What was your view on that? How did you approach it?
That's a great question because, full open kimono.
Please.
I told them, the buyers, that I could run the whole thing if you want me to.
The $100 million mothership.
Yes.
Got
it. I'm an Army guy. I'm a West Pointer. We're taught to lead large
and in charge.
Large organizations and complex organizations with lots of people. So I felt very comfortable with that. And I told them that. I said, I could run the whole thing for you. But the CEO said, nope, I'm going to do that.
My God.
I'm going to do that. And,
right.
We'll see how we can best utilize your skills. I said, okay. So I'll be over here. Let me know what you want me to do.
So let me ask then, because was there a lot of contention around you taking AC4S Technologies as a name? Did they see that as competitive? Was that a big negotiation? How did that happen?
No. So what we had to do was, in the due diligence process, we had to basically state on paper, any outside things that we had going on. And and there had to be a non-compete. So part of the agreement was there's a non-compete, right? So we're not gonna, pull employees over to the other side and try to steal customers. None of that stuff. And we clicked with our acquirers. And quite honestly, I'll tell you, we kind of look like geniuses, because they have Congress made new special rules, and the amount of work that they can do on sole source contracts it's a stupefying number. So I guess we're the beneficiaries of just kind of timing and luck and all that, but we really clicked with them, and we want them to be successful. We want, we're not going to steal from them and all that, and we had a vested interest. So, but we did have a non-compete. Yes.
And it was easier, I think, to allow you to go on to what's next, because your partner was going to stay behind. Right?
Correct.
So if you were the 100% owner CEO, their flexibility probably would have been less.
I would agree with that. That's true.
Yeah, gotcha. So now tell me. So this is a couple years since the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what the biggest surprise you encountered since closing the transaction, and tell me where AC4S Technologies is today.
So, it's probably the biggest surprise. It's not really a surprise, but the integrating companies is hard. I've said it before. I've been in other organizations that have been through those types of things, and it's never the technology and the systems, because you can make that work. You change this system, modify that. These days you can any system can talk to any other system with enough time and effort. The problem is the people. It's always getting people in their right seat on the bus in the new organization. And, there's gnashing of teeth, and that's just natural. But I think that any of those companies, because we essentially became the platform, right? And so they started migrating. And in fact, most of the leadership of the acquiring company has either moved to Florida or is in the process of moving to Florida. Yes. so we became kind of like the home base and the foundation. But again, everybody's got different leadership styles, and how do you do the integration, and who's doing what to whom? It's tougher than you think.
Yeah,
it takes longer.
It always is, man. It's tougher and longer, right?
Yeah, it takes longer than you project. There are all the great rosy pictures of how it's going to work, but the integration takes longer.
And so, AC4S Technologies.
Yes.
How many people there? Roughly, how big? And is it fair to describe you as an MSP, a managed services provider?
We are an MSP, and I will tell you that it's not very big. We have less than 20 people. Why? One is because the transaction with AC4S allows us to be
selective.
We had these intentions. We're going to do a repeat. We're going to grow, do all these things. But then you come to recognize that, the federal sector and the private sector are different. And, if I may, you have some customers that make it painful. And then, of course, as you grow and things change, employees change. And we just decided that we didn't have to do a repeat. And we're very selective about our customers and who we're willing to work with. And the other part to it is the technology has come so far in the last, I don't know, 5, 8 years, whatever it is, that you don't need as many people to do this IT stuff as you once did. We automate everything.
Yeah.
It's a hump at the beginning and engaging customers and new customers and all that, but that's kind of tough. But once you get everything configured and automated, and it just doesn't take as many people as you used to.
So your first venture was a 5-year adventure that turned into 15.
Yeah.
Is this going to be another one of those? Are you going to be at it for another 15, or do you think?
No. We're going to transition to instead of operating companies, we're going to transition to board work, and we've started down that path a little bit, but we'll finish up and transition to all board work here pretty soon.
So let me ask this, and then I want to ask about the board, and then we'll wrap up. So you're building a company now that's smaller. The first one was 50 million, did a great transaction. You kind of get the privilege of starting with a whiteboard.
Yep.
Knowing the things that people really liked and the things you got nicked for in
Yeah.
the first deal. Do you build a company differently, A, because of that experience, and B, because of the end in line?
Absolutely.
What's the biggest difference?
The biggest difference is, growing customer acquisition, number one priority. And sometimes at all costs, right? In the federal sector, we had painful customers and we lost money on customers. We went through that whole cycle of LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable. I would never do that. I would never, ever do that in the private sector. We don't do RFPs. My view is, if you want us, you want us, and if you don't, you don't.
Right.
I'm not going to do an RFP.
Now, let me ask you this. So the other thing I was interested about is that you're chairman of the board for the CEO Council in Tampa Bay.
Yes.
And that's a group of a couple hundred CEOs, I guess, right?
Yes.
So I would imagine there's some in that group where you see yourself from 15 years ago and you say, man, you just don't understand this or this or this. Is there one thing you see that maybe those guys or you back then didn't really understand the way you understand today, having exited once very successfully and growing another business and sitting on some boards and running the CEO Council?
The thing that I have learned from being around so many other successful CEOs is that there are many, many different ways to make money. And there's many, many, many different ways to manage and lead your company. I never knew or even considered a lifestyle business. And it's like, what's a lifestyle business? Well, you get to a point where the organization, the company is supporting your lifestyle, whatever that is. It could be, splitting your time between, up north and down here, or, remotely. I guess COVID has really stretched that, working remotely. So it's just been an eye-opening experience, and there are whole different ways to manage your business. But I will tell you that the one thing that's common between all of these businesses is leadership is leadership. It doesn't change what size of the company, or if you're in the private sector, federal sector, nonprofit, academia. I think that's it's been a validation of what we learned a long time ago.
And so
Leadership,
I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, leadership is key.
So I know you're also on the board of trustees for BayCare Health,
Yeah.
and you're running AC4S. Is there room to do more? Is there room to sit on more boards? Is there room to grow the business? I mean, how do you see the next couple of years playing out?
Yeah, that's a great question. The board work is depends what role you have on the boards. I would absolutely be, and it's my goal to do one or two more boards. Um, and it, if you're going to do it, you need to do it well, right? You need to be a contributing member and trying to press the leadership team of the operators, the people that are running the company. Where are we going? What are we doing? Why? Those kinds of pressing questions. So I think it's very important. If you're going to do these board seats, you got to do it well. And so I've been very committed to both BayCare and the CEO Council. I'm open to doing a couple, one or two more. I think that's enough. I don't want to do too many. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll get some opportunities.
Yeah, I'm sure they will come. Let me end with this. So I know you've been, a very successful entrepreneur, but also a successful husband, a successful dad, all those things that are at the end of the day, maybe more important than the first. Is there anything that you could point to, whether you reference Good to Great with, the right seat on the bus? Is there a book that you would reference? Is there an experience, maybe in addition to your time at West Point, or a mentor perhaps that you can kind of look back to and say this was the one or two things that were really impactful, that has had a long impression on you?
Um, we had a number of board members over the years, pressing us. And one thing that the very first board member told us, we always stick with it. No matter what business you're in, if you actually solve the problems that people are worried about, that keeps them up at night, people are far more likely to write you a check.
Yeah, very true.
So don't, there's some people in the Silicon Valley guys who run around and Austin and some of the other places will run around there. They're got these ideas. And that's great. We need innovation. We need people to do those kinds of things. But if you're a pragmatic capitalist and you're gonna move the needle, then start by solving people's problems, whatever that may be, and that will lead you to success. The other thing, I am a big, big, big proponent of leadership. I talk about it a lot. We studied it at West Point. And really the Good to Great book is one really about people, right? You're going to have the right people on the team. Being an entrepreneur, being a successful CEO is really about building the right team. It's a team sport. And you have got to lead that team well to execute on your plan. You got to get the right people on the team. Go win the Super Bowl. It's all about having that right team clicking and executing, hitting on all cylinders, whatever, colloquialism you want to use. But those things are true.
Well, it's 100% in agreement with you on that. And, to have somebody with the success that you've had, and to spend a little bit of time with us to share insights and some of the real granular details around your transactions is helpful and is appreciated. So I will say thank you very much. It'll be great to see how the board work continues to grow for you, but to watch AC4S Technologies and where you and Norm drive that to and eventually exit from. So I will say thanks. and wish you the best of luck, Hugh, as you continue to go forward. Also, just say thanks to our friends at Trivest. You can visit them at trivest.com. On secondbitepodcast.com, you'll find contact information for Hugh and for AC4S Technologies and anything else attached to the show. So, Hugh, thanks again. It was great having you.
Todd, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.